this morning the question that will confound metaphysicists for generations. Is it an affordability tour if you don't like talking about affordability? Overnight, President Trump held a campaign-style rally in Pennsylvania that was billed as the first stop on his tour to talk about affordability concerns among Americans. But he could not seem to do it without calling the entire notion a hoax.
They have a new word. You know, they always have a hoax. The new word is affordability. So they look at the camera and they say, this election is all about affordability. Democrats talking about affordability is like Bonnie and Clyde preaching about public safety. They use the word affordability, and that's their only word. They say affordability, and everyone says, oh, that must mean Trump has high prices. No, our prices are coming down tremendously.
Prices, by and large, are not coming down. That would be deflation, which has its own dangers. Inflation is not coming down either. It's at 3% year over year, the same level as January. What is down is the president's approval rating on the economy, just 36% in recent polling. And remember, this is one of the major issues that helped get him elected. Let's get right to CNN's Kevin Liptak live at the White House this morning. This is supposed to be the first of many stops here. Is the White House happy with how it's going so far?
Listen, this was really meant to road test the president's economic message. He did touch on those economic matters periodically in this speech, mostly to insist that Americans were doing better than they ever had been before, to blame his predecessor for virtually every amount of economic anxiety in the country. But it was pretty clear about 2 minutes into the speech, when the president took credit for reviving the phrase Merry Christmas, that this speech was going to be about a lot more than just the economy. He went on all kinds of tangents, attacking transgender Americans, talking about windmills and electric vehicles, saying that the U.S. border was now as tight as North Korea, and really launching a remarkably virulent attack on the Minnesota representative Ilhan Omar, talking about her head shawl, calling it a little turban, saying that he wanted to throw her out of the country. He also revived that derogatory term that he used during his first term in office to describe third world countries. You know, he denied using it at the time, but the president last night just came out and said shithole countries, saying that the U.S. shouldn't take migrants from those places, and he wants more from places like Norway and Sweden. And so it was a speech that meandered in all kinds of different directions. Even when the president was talking about the economy, some of his messaging was a little off-putting when he talked about how parents didn't need to buy so many dolls and pencils for their children, that they can do with fewer toys this Christmas. And so it did offer a preview of sorts for how the president plans to talk about this over the coming months. His advisors say that this is just the kickoff to an intensive round of domestic travel after mostly foregoing rallies over the last year. His chief of staff, Susie Wiles, who the president for some reason referred to as Susie Trump in his speech, says that he'll be out doing rallies over the next year. I think the great fear among his advisors is that he could be repeating the same problem that President Biden did, and trying to convince Americans that the economy is doing better than it actually is. And they worry that now, nearly a year into his term, that his argument that all of these problems are to blame for Biden is just getting thinner and thinner.
Yeah. We will see if he hones that message going forward. Kevin Liptak at the White House this morning. Kevin, great to see you as always. Kate?
Let's take another dip at this. So even as Americans continue to feel the squeeze of inflation, as John and Kevin were talking about, the president continues to claim that he has made good on his promise to bring down prices. Watch.
After just 10 months, our border is secure, our spirit is restored, inflation is stopped, wages are up, prices are down. We inherited the highest prices ever, and we're bringing them down. We inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. Think of that. And we're bringing them down rapidly.
CNN's Daniel Dale has a fact check on this and more on this one. What did you find, Daniel?
I found that there's a whole lot of wrongness in just those few sentences. So first of all, as John said, inflation is not stopped, as the president claimed. The latest inflation rate we have for September is 3.0%. Now, the president said that he inherited the worst inflation ever. The inflation rate the month he took office was also 3.0%. Now, it is true that inflation did hit a 40-year high of 9.1% in in June 2022, but President Trump habitually does not mention that the rate then declined sharply to the rate, again, 3.0%, that he inherited. Now, he said prices are down. Clearly, overall, on the whole, prices are not down when you have 3% inflation. It is true there are some particular items which have fallen. He often mentioned eggs, but on the whole, again, we have 3% increase. We have a 2.7% increase in grocery prices he often talks about. And I'll note some sort of creative tenses he used during this speech. He often said prices are coming down. We are bringing prices down. So those kinds of claims are harder to fact check, I think, by design. But there at the end of the speech in his grand finale, he said prices are down. They simply are not so far.
Working to bring down prices, that is a good thing. That would be a clear and honest statement if he would continue along that vein. But as you have noted, he is not. He went off prompter, as Kevin Liptak was talking about, and went to many other topics, as can be expected with President Trump in this speech. What stood out to you?
It was the usual laundry list of frequently debunked claims the president refuses to stop using. So, for example, he claimed that he secured $18 trillion in investment in the United States this year alone. That number is not even close to true. It's nearly double the number the White House website uses. Even that White House website number is wildly inflated. He claimed again that he has ended 8 wars, even though the list he recited includes 2 situations that were never wars at all during the Trump presidency, between Egypt and Ethiopia. That's a diplomatic dispute, and between Serbia and Kosovo. It's not clear what he's even talking about there. And also includes one conflict between Thailand and Cambodia that he acknowledged has flared up again this week. So clearly has not permanently ended. And he also repeated one of his most frequent claims, claiming that the prison populations, the entire prison populations of both the Congo and Venezuela, have been emptied into the United States. Simply no evidence for that whatsoever.
Danielle Dale, up early with a fact check for us. Thank you so much.
The group chat is back. You know, one thing I wanted to show that I didn't have earlier is that depending on your income, how this economy feels is very different, because is your growth, your pay growth catching up to inflation? So here's an example. You have a high income, guess what? You're making 4% more over inflation. Look at that number at the bottom, 1.4%. You are not reaching that inflation rate. You are feeling it.
Well, yes. I mean, look, last night what the president did, he talked a little bit about affordability, but didn't offer a whole lot of solutions, and he digressed. And he went on to Ilhan Omar and S-whole countries. And I think this is the fundamental problem that he,
Yeah, when is a weave adrift?
But when he talked about affordability last night, he talked about not having 37 dolls if you're a little girl and not having 2 pencils. The reality is, as CNBC declared, Americans are taking out short-term loans to buy groceries, Charlie Dent, to buy groceries. 6-figure income is now considered survival mode, according to USA Today. And so you can debate many things, but you cannot debate the facts. And every single thing that we do in America is more expensive now, primarily since Donald Trump has taken office, and those things are non-debatable.
I think one of the reasons why you heard the president pivot to immigration is because that's where they believe they're doing well, correct? That even the execution of the deportation scheme, they don't think is having a deleterious effect.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the immigration is one place where you can see tangible results. You can see him accomplishing his campaign promises, they believe. But I think you're seeing Donald Trump in his element, per se, right? He's at a campaign-style rally. He's in Pennsylvania. The last time he was there at a campaign-style was May 30th. He's talking to folks. He's doing the weave. He's talking about all these other things. But I know, in talking to folks who have spoken to him and spoken to his team, that there was advice pouring in about the way that he could change his language when it comes to talking about affordability. Pitch toward the future. Talk about how next year they think it's going to be a lot better. Talk about how it was the Democrats, not just Biden, that tanked the economy or whatever. And I don't know if you necessarily heard him changing his language.